everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the role of emotional intelligence in building awareness. And here we will have a look into self-awareness, as Ben mentioned, which is a very important core skill that helps us as coaches. So awareness is this place of stillness, of peace, where the client is becoming a whole, where he's aligning his external doing and his internal doing. It's a place of integrity, and we'll see how emotional intelligence can guide us to take the client to that place, and following the ACC framework, how we can manage our own emotions and our emotional responses in order to serve better our client. So this is how we are going to spend the next 60 to 90 minutes. We will first have a look into the concepts and the definitions of emotional intelligence. And we will then explore the intrapersonal skills of emotional intelligence, and then we will see the interpersonal side of it, how it applies during the conversation, the interaction with the client. And along the way, we will pause to invite you guys to the floor so that you will have many opportunities to share and ask questions for clarification. And now I will give the floor to Pyamsuk.
Hi.
Ben, can you manage the slides for us?
Now you can actually do your share screen.
All right. Okay, hold on. I have to look for it. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, Pyamsuk, the time is yours.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Nok. First of all, I would like to talk about a little bit about the what is the EI, or so we can call it EQ, or emotional intelligence, is all about, and is back into since the time of 1997 that the Howard Gardner has the definition of the EI. Emotional intelligence is currently a flourishing area in positive psychology, and research has shown it is associated with academic achievement, a decreased likelihood of aggressive behavior, and positive relating to others. EI has potential use in education, human resource management, including teamwork and building positive relationships with others, including the effect of emotional and decision-making, behavior, and family dynamics. So EI is an important subject to examine with many useful applications. Howard Gardner is separate the EI into two major areas. The first one is intrapersonal intelligence. It's about self, or about ourselves. Roughly is something is about listening to the inner signals of the inner of our individual. The second area is interpersonal intelligence. That is the we and others people. Okay, next slide, please. For most people, emotional intelligence is more important than the other intelligence, that is the IQ that we know, in attaining success in their life and career. As individuals, our success and the success of the profession today depend on our ability to read other people's signals and react appropriately to them, not just only setting into ourselves and thinking about us or me. Therefore, each one of us must develop mature emotional intelligence skills required to better understand, emphasize, and negotiate with other people. Regarding Howard Gardner, your IQ is the level of your ability to understand other people, what motivates them, and how to work cooperatively with them. It's regarding Goleman's, the EI is the capability of recognizing our own feelings and those others for motivating ourselves and for managing emotion well in ourselves and in our relationships. Next slide, please. Goleman has studied about IQ and EQ and has said the talk about the how well you do in your life is determined by both IQ and EQ, but IQ alone is not enough. EQ is also matter. The emotional intelligence predicts successful of our life, our working life, our personal life. Emotional competencies can be developed, but it takes some time acquire new competencies, and sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's not easy, but it can be developed. Okay, next slide, please. The other psychologists are Mayer and Salovey model in 1997 talk about the intelligence has applied in 4 areas of managing emotions so as to attain specific goals, understanding emotions, emotional language, and the signals conveyed by emotions, using emotions to facilitate thinking, perceiving emotions accurately in oneself and others. Next slide, please. Emotional intelligence can be, it's actually regarding Goleman, he separate the EI into 5 categories. But we can put into big areas of categories. It's personal competencies and social competencies, which on the personal competencies is consists of self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation. On the social competency, which is related to others, is the empathy and social skill. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize an emotion as it happens. It is the key to your EQ. The major elements of awareness are emotional awareness, is your ability to recognize your own emotions and their effects. It's about self-confidence, sureness about your self-worth and capabilities, knowing what we are feeling, being realistic about our abilities, and self-confidence in the grounded way. Self-regulation is you often have a little control over when you experience emotion. Self-regulation involves self-control, which is the managing disruptive impulses, trustworthiness, maintaining standards of honesty and integrity, consciousness, taking responsibility for your own performance, adaptability is the handling change with flexibility. The innovation is being open to new idea. Self-regulation is about the managing our emotions to help us get things done, recovering well from upset, being prepared to wait for result. Self-motivation. To motivate yourself for any achievement requires clear goals and a positive attitude. Motivation is made up of achievement drive, commitment, initiative, optimism, pursuing goals, persistency despite obstacles and setbacks. It is about using our values to guide us towards challenge goals, taking the initiative and being flexible to achieve the results. And these three are under the personal competency. And move on to the social competency, which is empathy. Empathy is the ability to recognize how people feel, and empathic people excels at service-oriented, developing others, sensing what others need to progress, and their abilities, understanding others, discerning the feeling behind the needs and wants of others, sensing others' feelings, needs, and concerns, which is we can connect to the other people. The last category is the social skills. Social skill is the development of good interpersonal skills, which is equals to success in your life and your career. Among those useful skills are influence, communication, leadership, initiating or managing change, conflict management, building bonds, collaboration and cooperation, and team capabilities. It's all about building relationships, manage conflict, and enable cooperation. So these are questions that I would ask you guys here. What difference would being emotionally intelligent make to your coaching process? And how could you develop these skills? So this is, maybe we can talk about this later after listen to Nok, that we talk about the personal. Yes?
Yeah.
Pass to you, Nok.
Thank you, Kiamsuk. So, okay, I can't move on. What's going on here? Sorry. So now, we are going to have a look into the intrapersonal emotional intelligence skills and the importance of developing this EQ for within ourselves, and how it will be serving us to be effective, transformative coaches. All right. So, as coaches, it is essential for us to develop our capacities in observing and capturing what our client is experiencing and what they are saying, what they are not saying. And emotional intelligence is really a key cornerstone for us to get into that understanding. We are going to look at how we can become smarter with our emotions and how it can help us to support our clients to uncover what is really meaningful, to go from just telling the story into that transformative shift that is obtained through reflective thinking, so that we can help direct the client's attention towards what is really important to the client and what is his true desired outcome. And all reflective thinking for the client to reach that new learning about themselves. So what are emotions? Emotions are strong feelings deriving from one's situation, mood, or relationships with the others. And there are several models to describe that realm of the emotions, but basically they all come down to 5 emotions. And they are being sad, mad, glad, scared, or loving. And there is a whole palette of grades for each of them. And for us coaches, one of the role is to mirror what is happening to the client, what he's feeling. It's very useful and helpful to become familiar with the nuances of these emotions. So here are some description of the emotions of being happy and being angry. And enriching our vocabulary will enable us to become more artful in our coaching. And I would say that especially for us in Eastern culture, when we are trained from the childhood to repress and not express too many of our emotions, to keep them at a very low level, enriching, having access to this whole nuances of vocabulary is very enriching and necessary for us to support well our client. Sorry, I come back here maybe for happiness instead of just reflecting, mirroring to the client. I can see how happy you are now. We can extend and use the word contentment or delight or exhilaration, felicity, or even bliss. And this way, it's, well, yes, it's more powerful, it's more colorful. It's bringing more life into the conversation, into the picture that we are offering to our clients. Here is the same exercise for the feelings, the emotions of anxiety, sadness, and love. So for instance, anxiety can be expressed through uneasiness or worry, distress, or even mortification. And yeah, again, using rich vocabulary is enables us to be closer to the client, to be closer to what the client is trying to express. Having talked about emotion, well, the truth is that we are not so much, well, we are more interested in the emotional response rather than in the emotion itself. So what I mean by emotional response is what will be triggered by the emotion. That response will affect one or many of our coaching competencies. So that's why it's very helpful for us to understand all the dynamics, all the mechanism of how we are automatically responding to some kind of emotion. Well, any experience that we are living is happening at 3 levels. The first level is the level of the sensation. It's the physiological changes, the signals that the body is sending to us. For instance, we can have a heartbeat that is increasing, our posture is changing, our voice is changing, and our body states like being warmer or being red in the face. All these are signaling to us that something is going on, that some emotion or feelings are triggered. Those emotions, they are linked to our personal history. They are shaped by what we have lived previously, and it's this past experience that is creating a conditioned emotional response. So this emotion, it's linked to a memory of something that is pleasant, something that we are going to look after, that something that is sought after. Or it can be linked to an emotion that we want to avoid, something that we don't want to face anymore. And this combination of signals and emotion will make the brain make an unconscious interpretation of the situation. And this interpretation or thoughts about the situation will automate a response and will make us act or behave in a particular way without even us being conscious about that. So these three levels of the emotional, the emotions, being the body or the sensation, the feeling, and the interpretation or the thinking, those three levels create a tension in ourselves. And this tension, as I mentioned before, is associated to something that we are looking for, something we're seeking, or what we can call an attachment. Or on the contrary, it can be linked or associated to something that we want to avoid, something that we can call an aversion. So depending on what the trigger, association with aversion or to attachment, our response will be affected. Our response in being and thinking will be affected in one way or another. It's an automatic, unconscious behavior that probably already worked for us in the past. However, this automatic response can impair our coaching skills. It can affect our being and thinking capacity. So we will, for instance, I would like to share a story about this, what happened to me not so long ago, and just to illustrate how this emotional response is happening. I was coaching a client who was telling me about a situation at work and how she wanted to manage her boss. And suddenly, I don't remember what question I asked her, but she suddenly told me that she wanted to quit her job. So it made me jump internally. And I stayed kind of voiceless. So this is the sensation that was resonating in me, that was created in me. So the emotion that was associated to that sensation is that I was surprised. And the thinking that followed that emotion of being surprised is that I'm a person who likes to be in control. So being surprised is an emotion that I try to avoid. So I thought that I was off track, that I was losing control of the situation. So instead of mirroring to the client what was happening, my response, my natural response, was only to paraphrase the client. I told her, so you want to quit your job, and what do you want to do next? So that was such a powerless question, powerless intervention. So it showed how our automated response can make us miss a window in coaching. So instead of that, I suppose that I could have direct my client's attention to the incongruence between her topic, which was managing her boss, and her decision, which was to quit the job. So a powerful question could have been, so what is the connection here? What is happening here? So with this example, I just wanted to illustrate how important it is for us to understand what is happening inside of us, in our brain, in our heart, as coaches, so that we can manage those responses in order to really serve our client to their best interest. So my example was a nice example of an unhelpful response to what was happening. And now we are going to have a look at what is happening when we have these unhelpful responses and how they are affecting our coaching effectiveness. So here on this slide, I have illustrated all the realm of emotions, like feeling excited or feeling irritated, impatient, feeling shocked, feeling happy, being emotional. And all those emotions, they can sometimes be related to habits of the mind. So what are those habits of the mind? They are, for instance, being attached to performance, having self-judgment, relying on a belief system, on a social identity, working with routines, being distracted, making projections in our client's situation, acting with or coaching with an expert mind, or being interrupted by emotional triggers. So those habits, they can come in association. And as I said previously, they are shaped by our personality, our own history. They were built through time for us to respond in a certain way, to protect ourselves or to make things work for ourselves. But these habits, they can sometimes distort our perception of the client or of the situation. And this, of course, is deserving us as coaches. So now we're going to look at some of them and the risks that are at play when they are showing up and the consequences on our coaching progress. So here I have tried to explain the dynamics of the emotional responses in coaching with unhelpful habits. For instance, self-judgment. What is happening when we are self-judging ourselves? It's, for instance, we are caught or wrapped into our thinking of believing that we are lousy, or we are not strong enough, or our presence is not strong enough. So if we stay in that thinking, what is happening is that we are not available for the client. Same result with social identity. Social identity is the image of ourselves that we are projecting to our clients, and how we see ourselves also. So for instance, the clients see ourselves as someone very knowledgeable, very skillful. And if we stay with that thought during our coaching conversation, the risk is that we can spend more energy or more of our attention to protect and reinforce that image. So same result as for self-judgment. In this case, we're not available for our client. Projections. Projections is, for instance, when we feel irritated or impatient with our client. We are falling into judging our client. And actually, what is happening is that the difficulties the client is facing and for which we are being impatient, they are sometimes the same difficulties that we cannot accept in ourselves. So that's when we are projecting ourselves in our client's situation. Actually, our emotional state of being impatient or irritated has nothing to do with the client. It's just reflecting the challenges that we are facing ourselves. So in this case, we cannot have a clear view of the client. We only see ourselves. And unconsciously, what can happen is that we may direct the conversation towards what we are attached to or away from what we are trying to avoid. Another consequence is that we may become attached to a certain vision, to a vision of something that worked for us, and we can be convinced, or we might direct the conversation towards that same way that worked for ourselves, and we are convinced that it will also work for our client. So we are directing the conversation. Very unhelpful behavior. Other habits of the mind are the belief system or the philosophical position. For instance, what I'm referring here is, for instance, when we believe that all answers in life reside within ourselves. So as coach, we will tend to direct our question so that they support our client to uncover their own response, which is a good thing. However, if we stay in that state of mind, we can become rigid about this, and this rigidity may prevent us from sharing or teaching an experience that could be meaningful for the client. For instance, I had the client lately who realized that she needed to have a difficult conversation with her son, and that meant influence and persuade him, or even negotiating him, and she didn't have a clue about this. So if my behavior, my response would have been staying rigid in my belief that all answers come from within ourselves, then she would have been stuck. Instead of that, I realized that she didn't have the knowledge. So naturally, I shared what I knew about influencing and persuading skills so that she could prepare herself and have that difficult conversation with her son and move forward. Routines, we can stay in automatic pilot. What is happening here is that because it's easier for us to stay on very well-known rules, we can follow a habit, and we do not pay sufficient attention to our client. And this is happening when we're using the same line of questioning, or falling into the same pattern of conversation, clients after clients, or conversation after conversation. Having an expert mind has the same result. When we are overconfident or assuming too much about what is happening to our client, we're not paying enough attention to the real situation, what the client is really experiencing. And of course, when we are distracted by external or internal things, internal being disconnected thoughts, thinking, chattering in our head, well, in this case also, we are not paying enough attention. So all these habits, those habits of the mind, are really unhelpful. And if we reconnect to the ACC framework, when we want to support the clients to get clarity in their understanding, the question is then, how can we take our client there to that space of clarity if our vision of them is obscured by the habits of our minds? So that's why being self-aware and learning how to self-regulate and how to self-motivate ourselves in order to transform these habits, this is where we will be the most effective coach in order to support them. So how is this happening? There are two levels of intervention here. There is during the conversation, so that's the left side of the screen, and outside of the conversation, so before or after the conversation. So during the conversation, Being self-aware is noticing the tension that is happening in our body. It's recognize what is going on and acknowledge the feelings or the emotion. It's knowing ourselves. Next thing to do in order to self-regulate is to pause and reflect on this situation, on what is happening. Is this an helpful or an unhelpful response? So if it's a helpful thing, then we might choose to use it. But if it is unhelpful, it's better to let it go. Before and after the conversation, it's a good thing to reflect on how the conversation went and be aware of our own beliefs and our positions. What is preventing us from being completely there for our client? Recognize the triggers so that we are able to manage them, to recognize them later when they appear during a conversation, and work to prevent the emotions from influencing the coaching progress. Our brain is plastic, so I believe that with practice, we can undo all the neuronal wiring that created those conditioned emotional responses, and we can create new helpful habits. Next, I'm going to we're going to have a look at some examples of what to do in order to manage those unhelpful habits and transform those emotional responses so that they become helpful habits. For instance, self-judgment. In self-judgment, once we have noticing what is happening, we have the choice either to follow, to stay there in those unhelpful thoughts and being not available, or choose to let them go, being unattached to those thoughts about ourselves, and bring back our attention to the client. Another example is the emotional triggers, or being emotional during a conversation. If we are caught or wrapped into our emotions, for instance, if and I'm sure it happens to many coaches when we start our journey in coaching, we want so much to help the clients. It becomes we want to fix them, and we are stuck in the client's situation. We cannot help them to get perspective in order to move on. So what to do is to dissociate with compassion from those emotions. And how do we do that? Each one of us as coaches need to discover his or her own method to dissociate from those strong emotions. So for me and for Pyamsuk, I know that it works this way. It's like we need to breathe this emotion away. We are closing our eyes and breathe in order to let it go and step back so that we can make that powerful pause for ourselves and connect to our deeper thoughts and that powerful question that will help the client to move forward. Other coaches have another way to dissociate. They kind of shake away their emotion. They make a move to step out. For instance, they will clap the table, or they will straight themselves. They will sit forward, or they will make a step on the floor. Or other coaches in different situations, they would laugh away the emotion to change the atmosphere or to change their own state of mind so that they can come back to their client. And my last example is about social identity. yeah, I was saying previously, myself, I was so much willing to help the client. I I I wanted to rescue the client because it was my natural emotional response. It was to rescue the client. I could not, while coaching the client. Oh, while coaching the client, I'm sometimes uncomfortable with emotions, or sometimes with the silence. When it happens to all of us, when we are asking a question, there is a long pause into which the client is into his deep reflections, and sometimes it can become uneasy for us. And in this case, we have to resist the urge to rescue the client, to help him in his thinking. So here again, we can make the choice to mark a pause for ourselves, take a breath, for instance, and allow the question to sink and the client to process his thinking. So it's a skill that can be built through time, and it's really, it's something that needs to be practiced. It's when you feel uneasiness brought during that silence, well, pay attention, just notice that uneasiness and connect it to the fact that it's because of that silence. It's because the question is sinking. It's because the client is into deep thoughts. So just relax, just pause, really mark the pause, and just wait for the answer to come out. So these are a few examples of how to transform habits of the mind that trigger unhelpful responses into helpful coaching responses. And in this slide, I wanted just to summarize this process of learning how to manage, how to become more self-aware, and how to control, to self-regulate those emotional response. So the first thing is to name what the client is feeling, his emotion. Then to claim our own emotion, name our own emotion. Tame the emotion is self-regulating, so that we can make those emotions work better for us. And explain or share what we are observing as a way to encourage partnering or thinking together. And when we are sharing our observation with a lot of compassion, this is where we are talking about empathy, which is in the second set of skills of emotional intelligence. And this is, before I pass the floor to Kyamsuk, I would like to invite you guys to share or ask any questions. If do you need anything to be clarified? Can everybody come back? Okay, wait. How do I stop sharing here? Yeah, let's make a pause here and just reflect on all of the sharing. Do you have any questions about the intrapersonal skills and how we can transform unhelpful habits of the minds into helpful ones?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Krishna.
I posted it on the chat by asking, how do we uncover unhelpful habits of the mind when one is so engrossed in the coaching process? How do you differentiate that? It sounded to me like it's not an issue of unhelpful habits. It sounded more like, how do you manage the mind during the coaching process? Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're not wrong at all. That's very correct. So as I said, there are two levels of intervention. So either you realize during the conversation that that something unhelpful is occurring, then you can stop yourself, make a pause, and reflect on how to interact with your client so that it becomes something helpful. And the second level is working on your coaching skills, but outside of the conversation. So reflect on what went well and what needs to be changed in your coaching habits.
Okay, I'm still going through the coaching training.
Yeah.
So forgive me for sounding like a novice. I am one.
No problem. We will come to that later on different practices that we can use in order to develop our self-awareness and become more mindful about what is happening.
Good. I think now let me help Krista out here. I think this is worth sharing. I just have a very fresh case just to share regarding the unhealthy habit.
Yeah.
Yesterday night, I was called in for a very urgent coaching engagement right at 1 o'clock in the morning. Mainly because a client of mine contacted me very late at about 7 p.m. to say that this person is flying off to, actually today he's flying off to Japan for an important meeting, and he really need a clarity in mind. Because it's a very serious decision, and he really wants to be able to speak to a coach to gain clarity. And he said, please talk to him. Of course, if you go for 24 hours emergency, you certainly have to pay for the price. But anyway, I took up the call, and we just have only 30 minutes conversation. And in that conversation, it was very calm. The client was very calm. And he was just clearly stating out what is at stake. So when he was talking to me in that kind of mode, I was first very curious. Number one, this was a very last minute urgent call, and it was scheduled at 1 o'clock in the morning. And the gravity of it is there, but yet my client is able to speak with a clarity in mind as he just puts the things on the table. This is this is this, this is this. Remember, we taught you in class that observation is a good science. And you need to recognize that we don't work with client. We work with the client's thought process. Because coaching happens in a conversation, and in a conversation, what the client is capable of producing is their thought. And that thought is presented to us like a content. It's just that it's not a written form, it is an audio form. But if you will treat the audio form as a written form, you should be able to observe the nature of the content. So the nature of the content, as I look at it, it's very interesting that it contained a lot of beliefs. The client was believing about certain things. Like, I need to expedite, blah, blah, blah. I need to gain quick success. I need to ensure stakeholder interest. So I pick up these 3 keywords and I put it to the clients and say, no, listen very carefully to these 3 bullet points. I actually use the word bullet point. Just imagine my client is not a coach, okay? So I actually say these 3 bullet points: appetite, ensure, stakeholder interest. As you hear these 3 bullets, what does that tell you about the kind of expectation that you are setting for yourself? He paused for a while. There was long silence, but this time I sensed that the silence was not because he's thinking. He was a little bit lost in figuring out what the 3 bullet is. Then I told him, it might be interesting if you take a look at the first bullet and how the other 2 bullets qualify the first bullet. The first bullet that you use is that you need to quickly expedite. And then immediately the client caught what I'm talking about, and he quickly says, Ben, I know what you're driving me to. I'm setting an expectation that I'm not conscious about, and that really bothers the whole way of looking at things. Then I say, good, let's take a look at that belief. Where does it come from? And then that's where the clients look at his own belief system and find out, okay, where that expectation comes from. Why did he feel such an urgent? And then from there, we're able to address a fundamental issue that he is simply very anxious at this moment. And that really crowds his ability to assess the situation as he begins to grab hold of how him constantly trying to push. And that state of mind, how is that making it so difficult for him to see through the clarity? So that is what I meant by, an unhealthy habit of the mind. It doesn't have to be a very negative habit that is very destructive. As long as there is a belief system that is embedded in the client's thought process, we can bring that up and ask the clients to examine it. And the coach is able to do that mainly because we are trained to learn to not hear the word. We are trained to find the bullets and understand what does that bullets mean in the scheme of the client's goal and topic or end result, and make sense of it. The clients will not tell you, Krishna, this is my unhealthy habit in my mind that I'm telling you right now, and hopefully you can ask me a question about this unhealthy habit of mine. You see what I mean? They don't. So that's why listening has to be go beyond just the word to understand what does the word contain. Is that a belief here? Does the word contain a belief for us to inquire? Does the word carries or being pregnant with certain emotions? And if it's the emotions that, what can we say about that emotions? Is that a positive emotion? Is that a negative emotions? Or that word, does it tell us anything about a value, an importance that the coach, that the client is holding on to? So that's where we are able to surface out whether it's an unhealthy or a healthy state of mind. And simply looking at the nature of the content again, and then ask ourselves, what kind of bullet is that bullet? Make sense? So in the training that we taught you, we only taught you at first level to pick up the bullet.
That's right.
And as you move on to the advanced training, then you begin to categorize those bullets in terms of the category. Is this a belief? Is it emotions? Is this a way of looking at things? Or is this a values? What is that?
Ben, it sounded like I'm in the wrong session.
Huh? Why?
It sounded like this is like the advanced level.
This is a post-training support to continue to strengthen and deepen you guys.
Okay.
And by the way, that's the good news. You're going for the advanced and you're not paying anything for it.
Naughty.
I'm a smart guy. Don't forget. I'm a professional. Yes. Thank you. Now I'm going to pass the time to you.
All right. Okay. Thanks a lot. Good.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Krishna, for your question.
No worries.
Any other question?
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Nok.
Yes, Melanie, go ahead.
Thank you. I've got a client who I'm coaching at the moment, and one of the I asked her for some feedback on my session, post-coaching session, and one of the things she mentioned, well, the only thing that she mentioned for feedback for improvement was the pauses. She said they were really long and they were a bit awkward, and so I said to her, that's really interesting feedback, because I was quite specific in creating those pauses because I can relate to what you're talking about. I want to rescue the client. And so I was really careful not to do that. And I didn't think they were particularly long pauses. I probably could do better in that space. However, she mentioned to me that it was really awkward. And so now I'm wondering about what kind of questions I can bring back to her next time, because I think perhaps there's some unhealthy habit of mind going on there for her, or perhaps it's something that she's unaware of. So yeah, what thoughts have you got to offer me around that?
Well, I guess it depends on the question that you ask. What were you expecting from that pause, from that question?
I was expecting from the question of feedback.
No, from
the questionnaire.
The question that produced a long silence.
I was expecting to stimulate her thinking around what she wanted to achieve, and really what I was trying to help her do, because it was very transactional type of goals that she was setting for herself. So I tried to take her, and I think I did it in part, I did it successfully, where I took her to a place of connecting to her value, like a deeper, sort of peeling back the onion and looking at a deeper value that she was tapping into as to why she wanted to achieve some of this stuff, to help her encourage some sustainable change. So it was really looking at some deeper emotion and connection as to why she really wanted to achieve it. So it wasn't like, well, I'm going to set this goal of doing one thing every day. It was more like accessing her her value system. So I wanted to allow the space for her to be able to do that. And so her comment to me was, if you're going to give people long spaces, perhaps tell them to write it down. Tell them that they can do something. Like, she was quite uncomfortable with having this space.
All right. So maybe it's something to explore here. It's what made this uncomfortable.
And would that be so? In terms of coaching practice, I've asked her for this feedback outside of the coaching session. So do you think that's appropriate to next coaching session we go into next week? Is it acceptable to then bring that up?
Well, yeah, I think you can do that. But maybe what can be more helpful for you is to think when creating this space, those long pauses are not so helpful for the client.
Okay.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So perhaps when she's going into, or when there is a long space, so I continue my practice of allowing the space for her, and then
go ahead.
Sorry.
Maybe maybe thinking about your client, this specific client, there might be some situations or some cases when it's not helpful to let her think too much. For instance, earlier on, I was mentioning that example when I had this client who needed to have influencing and persuading skills that she didn't have. So it would have been useless, you see, to leave her in reflecting, because she wouldn't have found the answer anyway, because it's knowledge that cannot come from within. It's something that you learn. So there might be other cases for your client when it doesn't work to allow too much space.
Yes. And Natalie, I think Nok highlighted a very key point, is that having the emotional intelligence as a coach means that you're able to notice the space that you are creating in the process. And that space needs to correspond with the coaching process. Like, for example, at the beginning, when you started the conversation with the clients, do we actually give them long pauses? We don't, because that is not the appropriate time to have the pause longer. You can slow down your speed to make sure that the clients get into a pace of rhythm that is not excited and able to compose. But again, as the conversation moves, we look at the content. If we want the clients to tell the story, or we want the clients to be able to bring in solid content onto the table because we want to see what is there first, then the pause is not appropriate. Because content to be put on the table has to be put on. You can't wait and pause. Like what I'm trying to do now. Everybody look at it and say, what's going on? Because the expectation is I need the content to be on the table. You know what I mean? So in those contexts, the pause is counterproductive, because your intention as a coach is there is no content on the table. And I need those content to see where I can find an appropriate window. Once you're able to find a very meaningful window, like for example, I notice you use this word, blah, blah, blah. And that's where the pause becomes useful, because you're asking the clients to offer an understanding of one particular window, compared to you having the clients to give a more content to be on the table. Make sense? So that's maybe one reason why it doesn't land for the clients with those pauses. Maybe because at that context where you're actually giving the pause, the question has not prepared the clients, or there wasn't an appropriate window that allows the clients to give an understanding. So what I'm trying to say is that when the context for reflective learning is not there, then the pause serves as a counterproductive. For example, the discussion landed, the inquiry brings the conversation to a point whereby what are the things that serve you and don't serve you? Or we talk about the things that don't serve you. And then you give a long pause for the clients before you ask the questions. It's sort of like, why do I need to wait so long for you to ask me what do you think serve you and don't serve you? Make sense? Because what we want is to generate content. So when we want to generate content, having long pause actually breaks the thought process rather than stimulate more content. So that's one reason possibly why your clients is not feeling comfortable with those pauses. But it certainly does not compromise the principle of a pause. The principle of the pause is allow people to go deep. And to go deep, we need to look at the context surrounding the process, where the conversation has been so far to the point when you bring a pause. So it's going back to the dance, getting the right rhythm and the right step and feeling the music and the beat. in order to have that powerful impact. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. Cool.
Yeah, there's more to reinforce what Nok is trying to express just now.
Thank you. Okay, should we move on? Okay, let's move on. So we have discussed about how emotional intelligence can help us to develop our self-awareness and what to do to self-regulate it in order to build up our coaching effectiveness and become more artful. So right now, I would like to hand the floor to Pyam-Suk, and he's going to talk to us, to share with us about interpersonal emotional intelligence. So let me share the screen. Pyam-Suk, you are on mute.
Yeah. Thank you, Nok.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think that from our conversation before, I think that we can go to the slide of the cultivating self-awareness and mindfulness, which is next, yeah, that one. Okay, right. So what that Nok has talking about was about the intrapersonal. It's about a self-management. It's about how to manage yourself as a coach to have the strong EQ, and that would support and serve very well to our clients. Now I would like to talk about the mindfulness of the self-awareness that to make us up into the higher level of the self-awareness, so that the higher self-awareness can help us to observe our clients' feeling and attributions and understanding the impact on the other. So we can have mindfulness of paying attention in particular way, purposefully, intentionally, in the present, at the moment, right at the moment, and non-judgmentally. I remember that we are talking about the coach's presence. We are here, we are now, and we are here for, I am here for you as a coach. We are a partnership, and we go into this journey together. So this is the sense that we can create during the coaching conversation, in terms of we have both of us higher EQ or the self-awareness. To practice, to develop our mindfulness in self-awareness. Next slide, please. I can suggest some of the techniques or some of the practice around to help us to have develop our mindfulness during our coaching. First thing is slowing down. We know that our thinking, our thought is very, very fast. Some say that it's faster than the light of speed. You're just slowing down, pausing to examine that you are experiencing and what is our thinking right at the moment. To be mindfulness, to practice in the meditation, loving kindness meditation, active meditation. We can sit tight and do meditation, or just even when we are walking, we know that what we are doing now, this is the right footstep, this is the left footstep. This is the way of we do the meditation in many ways. Sit still, focus on breathing, or symbolic object, noticing the thought, images or feeling that is arise. Let them go and come back to the object of the meditation. This is a lot of way of practice meditation, and this increase your mindfulness. Centering yourself, practice of bringing attention to the body, reduce brain's compulsive activity, and allows a different sense of depth to emerge. We can do the peer coaching. Every time that we do the peer coaching, we can learn a lot of things. We can practice our mindfulness during the coaching. Journaling or write on something on the paper is a very good way to move things in here into our body and then get into the paper, and that is practicing our focusing and our mindfulness. Physical activity is not just parking our body on the treadmill. Become conscious of our body, where it needs attention, where it feels good, what it's asking for. Creativity available to all of us. Find a way to tap into the realm. Dance lesson, poetry, or singing class. Go somewhere else that you like, and use your favorite activities to get into yourself and practice your mindfulness. Time outdoor, connect with the natural world is retroactive, help reduce mental chatter and bring us into the present, and enjoy everything around. So this is the something that we can do to develop our mindfulness. So I think this is the content that we would like to share. So I would like to invite us all to share the experience. Or may I share my experience when I have the healthy mindfulness and very high EQ when I'm doing coaching. It happened a couple of weeks ago. I have a very strong mind at that moment, and I do the coaching for one of my clients. The session was going very well. It's around 45 minutes of the conversation. Everything goes very well. The client has emerging some of the very, very important for her to moving forward. And after the conversation, I asked her the feedback. The feedback was that she felt like everything just like the flow of the water. It's cold, comfortable, flow, open-minded. Everything can come out from her thinking very easily. So this is, I can say this is from very strong and very mindfulness of the coach, and would help or serve the client to have more awareness for themselves too. So this is my experience. So I would like to invite anyone has some kind of the good experience or something that related to the mindfulness, high emotional intelligence.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So it's very interesting to share what I went through. So I was in the mode of already listening pattern quite some time back. And I went through a whole lot of understanding of emotional intelligence and training. And then, of course, my coaching 74th cohort that I went through. And I realized that when we are talking to the client, as a coach, I needed to really stop being judgmental, because we're so habituated to think that, if this is what the client is sharing, I exactly know what his problem is. So in one of my practice sessions, when my colleague said that he was in a dilemma about whether to continue in his new profession or, go back to his old job. And I'm like already listening to him and saying that, this is no rocket science, I had just to ask him a couple of questions, and ideally he should just do what he is safe in, he'll feel secure in. And then I realized that it was such a disaster, that whole practice call that I had with him, because I was speaking from my map. I was trying to give him, that secure, how a secure job is, more comfortable and things like that. But the beauty of it is, as soon as I became emotionally aware that no, this is not, I need to take a pause here because I'm driving through my emotions, my experiences. So we did that call again after a while, and it was amazing to see the result because I was more in the moment then, and I had stopped talking and listening to what is going on in my head. So I became more emotionally aware, more present, more centered, I feel. And then I could really take him through a journey of his own discovery of what he wanted to do. And it was an absolutely satisfying experience, I must say that.
Wow, beautiful.
Great.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I add something about emotional intelligence?
Mm-hmm.
About some unhelpful habits that I have. I tend not to listen enough to my emotions, I think, as a coach. And I tend to back off from what I'm experiencing instead of sharing it with the client and partnering with the client, so that it's a new way for exploration for the client. And I think, yeah, that can be something. When you're aware of it, we can reflect and practice on that so that it becomes a strength, so that we learn to listen to our emotions and make them work for us.
True.
So what are your takeaways, all of you, for today's webinar? No takeaways?
I've got one.
Yes, go ahead, Melanie.
I found that really useful. Two takeaways. One being that think about the context of the pauses that I use.
Yeah.
And also exactly what you've just mentioned. I really relate to not to the emotion coming up inside me, or some observations that I make about my clients, but I withhold and don't share them readily because I'm too wrapped up in my own insecurities. And I think it's really important to be brave and to put yourself out there, because that is partnership.
Wow. Yeah, that's great awareness. Thank you, Melanie, for sharing.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate your time and your energy.
Thank you.
I'd like to share, Ngoc.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Well, this is a realization for me that, well, based on what I've heard from you, that in a recent coaching conversation, my own view of the client stopped me from being able to ask more questions and understanding more of what the client was actually feeling. Because, and then it really sent a red flag that I didn't know how to handle the conversation at one point, because I didn't expect the reaction that I got from her. So, and my realization really is that I wasn't really in touch enough with how I was feeling, and perhaps I didn't prepare enough for that conversation.
Okay, thank you. Great awareness again.
Thank you too.
Can I just share one takeaway?
Yes, please, Krishna.
I thought of these two words, the unconscious conscious. I'm not playing with words, but I think that is what it is, because unconsciously you act out and you manifest your behaviors. Now, some of these behaviors and emotions can be quite toxic, or it can be quite adverse. So for me, the realization is, make sure that you are conscious of the unconscious so that you can manage your emotions better in the coaching process. For me, that's very personal.
Great. Thank you. I like this statement. Yeah. Thank you, Krishna.
One of the biggest takeaways for me has been the emotions meter, the one with the increasing intensity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The nuances.
Yeah.
The nuances. Yeah. Oh, I'm great. I'm glad it's serving you.
It's amazing.
Helpful.
Yeah, and I think I'm really excited about using it in future.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's very nice. And
thank you.
I'm glad that there was this one question about using long pauses or allowing the client to be in a long pause state.
Yes, yes.
And
that's great learning, yes.
Thank you guys for kind of, bringing in clarity one more time again that the client really needs to be prepared, and then we kind of, so it begins with a lot of storytelling first, and then a lot of time for long pause, and not initially in the conversations,
Yeah.
So that really helped a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick observation from me. I've had a tendency, because I'm learning, to focus on the client and observing the client and listening to what the client says. But what I realized with this session is that it's just as important to be aware of you as a coach and your filters and your emotions, because they can actually give the wrong color to your observation. So
exactly.
I think that's a very, very good thing I learned today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Any more sharing? Any more takeaways? So I do like Ben, I will count down. 5, 4, 3, 2.
I may add on just the last part that I would just type in the comments. I believe that with high emotional intelligence, that would help us as a coach and would serve the client in terms of the integration of thinking, feeling, and doing, and make them all congruent and can move the client forward. And during the same time, we can learn a lot of things from those coaching sessions. So this is from
Yes, and become smarter with emotions is very, very, very helpful for life also, not only in coaching conversations. It can help you so much in your family life, in interacting with your colleagues, etc. It's really a life skill, I believe. Yeah. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks very much.